United it's coming together, isn't it? There's elements there where, I mean, let's be honest, it looked like a bit of a wreck at the start of the season, and it's much more coherent.
Manchester United are really interesting, I think, because
good start.
The thing that you have to remember with Manchester United is that they are set up to play in a certain way, but they want to play in a different way. And so they have a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde approach to a lot of games, right? So some games they can come out and play really transitional football where they're sitting a little bit deeper, they're looking to not concede, and then so they've beaten certain teams doing that, right? They've beaten Arsenal by playing in that way. They've beaten Liverpool. Did they beat Liverpool? They beat someone else playing that way.
They did beat Liverpool.
But they also want to be able to beat the smaller teams, and you can't, as Manchester United, you can't sit deep and try and counter against smaller teams because they're not going to try and possess the ball. So what we're seeing is Ten Hag trying to get them to a situation where they can do this more possessional football, like you would expect more elite sides to be able to do. And so at the moment, like there's some games where Manchester United are looking good, and there's other games where they're not looking as good, and the big question is like, what's the difference between them? And I think that the difference is just being able to code switch between those two different ways of playing. And the last couple of games I think have been really promising for Manchester United because they've come up against teams where they've been able to maybe play in the more progressive way that they might want to in future. But there's still a lot of work to be done. So I mentioned the Spurs game. Manchester United were good in that game, but I feel as though Spurs did very little to stop Manchester United from building up. And I think we've seen teams this season cause them problems in build-up phases. So the Brentford game, for example, is one where Brentford were quite aggressive in their pressing, and it caused Manchester United problems, and they actually lost the game on that basis. So I think that the Spurs game, for example, they were able to progress the ball to the end edge of the penalty area, and then the big question is like, how are you generating chances? And that I think has been true of a number of games. I mean, Manchester United did the same against Ammonia in the Europa League, where they were able to progress the ball quite well, but when it came to like the final third, it was maybe they were maybe struggling at least in the first half to generate any sorts of good chances. So that's where I'm at with Manchester United now. It's sort of, if you can cause them problems in certain areas. So, for example, like if you can stop them from building up, like how good are they? And then once you get to the final third, like how good are they at generating those really good, repeatable chances that will mark them out as being a very good side? But the same is true of Chelsea. It's worth saying, like Chelsea under Tuchel, the big question was like, okay, they can progress the ball forward well, but once they get into the final third, they're just not dangerous enough. And I think there's still questions to be asked of whether or not Graham Potter can overcome those problems too.
Well, there was a bit, I think Laurie Whitwell wrote in The Athletic,
theathletic.com/Tifo.
Today, what do you say? How one of the things that Ten Hag wants to do is for his team to create from midfield. So not from deep, not relying on that counter-attack, but that sort of long ball. Basically, like I remember talking to a couple of managers in the past and asked them about their style of play, what they wanted to do. And what they've said is that, why, I've asked them, why are your defenders shelling it over the top to no one? It looks like you can't be what you want them to do. And they say,
they said, yeah.
They say, I get this all the time. Well, it's like, it's not that. You need to look for where the space is. Where's the space? Often it's behind the back line. Often it's wide. So you put the ball in the space. You can gain territory. It's like rugby. Push up, chase it. Newcastle do this. And chase it up, and you can get the ball. You can pin a team into that certain area, and you build from a higher position. Like United right now, what I saw against Newcastle was they really struggled to play out from the back. I don't know if it's players just not quite sure where everyone is supposed to be at certain times. Players like, I think Diogo Dalot seems like a decent player, but his passing, if you watch, sometimes his angle is just slightly off, and it really causes issues for other teammates. Like it'll be recorded as a successful pass, but sometimes his passing is a little bit loose, things like that. You can get little players making mistakes, especially under pressure. And that's one of the problems where they got kind of building out from the back. But we saw against Spurs, some of that positional rotation, especially in the midfield, was really working, and they were able to press higher up, especially without having Ronaldo in the team. Like, that's one of the reasons I think
we were doing so well. I thought we were going to get away with it.
One of the reasons they were so good against Spurs, genuinely, is because Ronaldo wasn't in the team, so they could press from the front in the way they want to. And it's not a relentless, intense press, but they can cover certain angles. The goalkeeper gets closed down when he needs to. Last time I saw Ronaldo play, he was letting the goalkeeper have the ball for as long as he wanted to against Newcastle, I think it was.
But then he scored. And then it was disallowed.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I mean, you score one goal, but your team concedes two. Like, there's huge numbers that show the amount of games they win without and win with. It's like when you play at five-a-side and you've got a guy who scores you like 5 goals a game. He's amazing. He's all dribbles. He's so good. But your team still loses because all he does is stays in the corner at the top of the pitch. Happens all the time. So you need a bit. It's all about the team, and I think Ten Hag's really got this. And like part of management isn't just the tactics or that sort of stuff. It's about managing the dressing room and the club and like your role within it. And the way he's managing Ronaldo now is very difficult to do because Ronaldo was a big deal, and Ten Hag isn't quite just yet. So that's quite complicated, especially when you've then got loads of people in the media, like the pundits, who would then side with other things. Anyway, build up to one thing.
Oh yes. Carry on.
Creating chances in the midfield is another thing. You can see it's a work in progress, and I can see that they are getting better, but it depends on who they're playing against. Like Spurs press with the front two, so it's not the same. Chelsea, what was their pressing structure? Was it
Chelsea were quite passive actually in the first phase as well. They were doing the thing that they did against Milan, which is they have a front three, but their forward is on the pivot player rather than on the back.
To encourage them out a bit?
Yeah. So you allow them the ball and say, we're not going to give you any space in midfield, but because we don't think you're going to be dangerous enough from the back line to cause us problems. So.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm still thinking about the five-a-side team where you don't enjoy it because one player is just going off and doing their own thing all the time. But there we go. I like to tie everything up, obviously, with no loose ends. So Chelsea won the Premier League title in 2017, I think it was. Who finished second that year? That was
Norwich.
Conte. No,
I think it was Norwich, yeah.
Might
Yeah,
have
it's
been
Norwich. I'm
seventh,
sure
I think. Norwich might have been seventh. With Spurs. So there we go. That's exciting.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.